Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Cory Lee. Cory is an executive director for John Maxwell and his team. So he works with businesses who are wanting to grow, but with three things in focus. And we don't generally put those three things in with corporate growth, but they're family, they are faith, and fitness. So, Cory, just share with our audience, please, what got you into doing what you're doing and what drives you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lois. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited about sharing part of my story with you guys today and hope it adds value. So, as you mentioned, I am an executive director with the John Maxwell Team, where I work with teams and organizations, businesses, and leaders. But my background is actually in the medical field. I'm a physical therapist assistant. And in a 5-year period of time, my wife and I, we built 2 physical therapy clinics. We had 4 gyms and had 3 kids. And at the end of that 5 years, we sold all the businesses, kept all the kids, and I transitioned to doing what I do now and absolutely love it. And what kind of drives me is developing other leaders who will go out and develop other leaders. I love that. I love impact. And that is my goal, is to see a life changed. As a real quick story, I was telling my wife the other day, I was working with 2 leaders, and both of them mentioned that, my spouse has even told me how much they've seen me change. And I love that. And that, to me, that's what drives me, is to see a life be transformed and changed for the good. So, yeah.
So for the good, and you talk about that in relation to balance, right? And I think many times what we find is when people get to that end of career and they're looking at legacy, what impacts people's ability to really leave a meaningful legacy is they have maybe spent so much time doing what they're doing that their health is failing. Or perhaps they've invested no time in their relationship with their spouse, so that's falling apart, perhaps, or their kids are a wreck. And so you look at growth in relation to keeping a balance. How do you do that, and how do you coach for that?
Yeah. So there's been a couple of instances in my life that has really had to shake me up, that I've learned kind of the hard way there. And one was, again, early on in my career as a physical therapist assistant. And right out of college, I can remember working in this nursing home, and every story, every single one of them was around the fact that I worked hard. And me and my spouse always talked about where we were going to go, where we were going to travel, all the things we were going to do. And then I retired, and now I'm here. And I just remember telling my wife, I said, I don't want to hold off life, right? I want to experience life in the moment, and also balancing that with saving for retirement and those kind of things. But if there's an opportunity, I want to experience life. And then the other thing was, you heard my story there, where we were building all those businesses and had all the kids. And at the peak of that, my time was from 4:30 a.m. to about 8:30 at night in the gyms or at the PT clinic. And I can remember one day I was leaving our home, transitioning at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I was telling our oldest son good night. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. And he was about 5 at the time. And he looked up at me and he said, "Daddy, you going to your house?" And it hit me that I was spending way too much time away from the things that I said were truly important to me. So you talk about how do you coach that? I think the first thing is getting clear on what your values are, right? Like if I'm coaching somebody else, their values may not be mine. That's totally fine. But getting clear on what those values are, and then setting up a system and a structure in place to see, are you actually living those values out. And that's one of the things I try to do at the end of every day is I have 7 questions I'll ask myself around my core values. It's easy to say that this is what I say is valuable and then not actually do it, right? So it's just a way to hold myself accountable. So those have been some things that have really helped me and some of the individuals I've been able to come alongside of and help them too.
So what are the 7 questions you ask? You say that now I'm curious.
Yeah. So, well, again, these are mine, and yours or anybody else's may be a little bit different. So the first one I always ask is, what did God teach me? I'm a person of faith, and that's a core value of mine. And if it is, then I should be living that out in some way. The second one is, what did I learn today? So growth is very valuable to me, especially in what I do. I need to be growing, right? I need to be learning. So what did I learn today? The third one is, what was a win for the day? That kind of helps me stay grateful. I've found it's very easy. I don't know about you. It's very easy to go through the day and just totally forget what happened throughout the day. Then I'll ask myself, did I lead my family well? And I use that's kind of subjective, obviously, but I at least start the question to ask myself, did I exercise? Was I wise financially? And then for me, the last one is, did I compromise? That's just a weakness for me sometimes, is procrastinating or doing just good enough. So that's a way for me to do a checkup. Did I compromise today? So those are my 7 questions.
Thank you. So for you, Cory, as you work with businesses, what do you find are some of the biggest challenges leaders face today in their world?
Yeah, a couple of things is one, getting clear on what is most important and actually living that out. The other thing that I've big time seen is that most leaders, we're driven, right? We are driven, especially high level leaders who are big time driven. It's creating that white space, creating times to just kind of get away from everything, to mentally check out, to regroup, those kind of things. And one of the things we talk about in leadership many times is that you can't be at 100% all day, every day. You're going to burn out. But picking your spots to when you can be and when you do need to be at 100%. Like I'm in this podcast talking with you and other leaders, I need to be at 100%. Now, there are other times in my day that I don't necessarily need to be at 100%. So what I have seen is being able to take that white space and take advantage of that white space, not allow the mind to control that. I think it's a huge need for leaders, and I see it's a big struggle as well.
So when you do mastermind groups, Cory, is that part of what you focus on, or what is your intent with your mastermind groups?
Yeah, it is a part of that. So one of the main focus of the mastermind group is to put leaders in an environment conducive to growth. When we were building our business, one of my biggest, I say frustrations was I could go to the courses, I could go to the seminars, the webinars, I could read all the books. I could find somebody who could mentor me from a distance, but I didn't have an individual or a group of other leaders that I could go to, who I could ask questions, who really related to what I was going through, who could hold me accountable to the things I said that I was going to do, to my commitments, and then also who would really serve as guardrails when I said I wanted to grow my business, but not at the expense of my faith, my family, and my fitness. So it's really creating an environment where leaders are in an environment to grow. There's a specific environment for seeds to grow, the same way with leaders. And I've tried to create that. And that's one of the intentionalities behind that too. Yeah.
So are your mastermind groups local, or do you do them virtually? How do you do mastermind groups?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The ones that we do are virtual because we have men that are scattered all over America right now, and which is awesome. You get guys that would never met each other otherwise, and develop that relationship and that bond, and they can call each other outside of that. So we meet virtually, and then we also get together twice a year at a leadership retreat, and that's part of being in the mastermind group. But yeah, we do it virtually, and it's been awesome. It's been great. I've loved it.
So what's the focus of your mastermind group? What do people accomplish as a result?
Yeah, so that's another interesting thing, is because each leader comes in there with a different focus, and each one of them come from a different background. And what's kind of cool about it is that each one of them are driven and they have a desire for growth. And what makes it interesting, the fact that they all come with their own backgrounds and own kind of focus, is we do grow together. We have a book that we read together and focus on specific growth. But each week, a leader gets into the growth seat or hot seat. We call it growth seat. And that leader brings the agenda. They're the one that brings their topic, their issue, their idea, or whatever it is. And it's all about them and their focus. And then you have 10 other guys or 10 other leaders in that group, helping them think into that situation, that idea, that scenario. So the main focus is growth and being intentional about that growth. And then the other things is your focus, and the guys or leaders in the group can help you accomplish that. So it's been really cool to be in a group with some smart, talented leaders who can help you think through those kind of things.
So, Cory, how do people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on pretty much all the social media sites: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. But I've tried to create a specific landing page specifically for your listeners where I'll have links to all that. But I wanted to give 2 free downloads as well. And that landing page is CoryLeeLeadership.com/legacy. So Cory is CORY, Lee, leadership.com/legacy. And on there's one download is it's kind of a questionnaire to see how balanced your life is. We talked a little bit about that. And then the other one is a spousal survey. So you print that off, you hand it to your spouse, and your spouse fills that out. And the whole point there is to facilitate good conversation between you and your spouse. And I'll be honest with you, Lois, I was a little bit nervous allowing my wife to fill ours out, but it was great. It was great, and provided great conversation. So I want to do that for your listeners.
So we will put information about that in the show notes for you, so you can easily access that when the podcast is complete. So, Cory, tell me, what did you learn when you gave your survey to your spouse, to your wife, to fill out? Was it different from what you perceived yourself to be? What were your big takeaways?
Yeah, there were actually 2 big takeaways. One, for me, I told you I was a little bit nervous, but actually there were some things that I do really well that I did not see. And there were some things that she wanted me to do that I had never even considered. So both were blind spots for me. And one was a good blind spot that I didn't even realize that now that I know it, I can be more intentional about doing even better in that area. And then the other one is, it was an easy fix, but it was a blind spot. And I just think if we would have never had that conversation, that I would probably still be doing that to this day, and probably frustrating her too. So it was a great thing. She actually would not fill it out unless I gave her one to fill out for me, or for her. She wanted me to fill out one on her. And it was really good. It really, really was. I think it took our communication and our relationship to another level.
So family, I think, is often one of the areas that we omit the most. Well, faith, probably also. Fitness, I think we talk about more in relation to leadership, but faith and family, not as much. So do you include that in your mastermind groups? How do you weave that through? What do you do in this PC culture of ours to be able to talk about it in a open way?
Yeah. So I think the starting point there is creating a culture of honor, right? So I am a person of faith, so I'm naturally going to attract people like that. I'm going to naturally attract people like me, but we're very welcome to people of other opinions and other faiths. And we've had other people who are different. And again, if you've got a culture of honor, then you're not going to talk about each other. You're not going to bash each other. You're going to still try to build each other up with an understanding of that other person. But with that, there's an upfront conversation and upfront expectation, meaning that, we're all here for the purpose of growth and to grow. And, we're going to honor each other. We're not going to talk about each other. So I think having that culture of honor, I think the other thing too with the PC culture is just not allow yourself to get offended. It's okay, right? Like, so those are a couple of things that we actually talk about as a culture of honor, and just move beyond being offended and try to see things from other people's perspectives, Yeah.
So I want to go back to leadership and the people with whom you work. As you work with your mastermind groups, Cory, what do you think is the biggest challenge or biggest barrier that leaders have from having the growth in their life and in their business that they really desire?
Yeah. It was probably the same for me when I was first starting out, is understanding that John Maxwell even talks about it. He's got a law of the lid, basically, and understanding that I am the lid on my business. If I lead a team, understanding that I am the lid on that team, and that my team will never surpass my ability to lead them. But if I grow, then the potential of my team will grow as well. And another thing that's really helped me, and I've seen to help leaders as too, is kind of laced through the book, Extreme Ownership, taking ownership that everything rises and falls under my leadership. If I lead it, then I take ownership of that. Even if the lowest person on the totem pole, as you would say, fails, then that is still my responsibility. Did I train them up right? Did I provide them all the things necessary? Were there clear expectations? Is it the right person? So owning that, I think, is a huge, huge thing. Also understanding that it all starts and stops with the leader, that everything rises and falls on leadership. And if I'm the leader, it's under my responsibility.
So with that in mind, one of the things that we are hearing more and more is the loneliness of the leader. That role is a very lonely role. So speak to that a little bit, if you would, please.
Yeah, it is tough. And that's kind of where I found myself in our business early on too. Like I said, I didn't have the group of guys or a group of leaders that I could go to, ask questions, those kind of things. But as I reflect back, I put myself there. Like I did not come off the mountain, go down to the mountain and bring people with me. What I had done was I had developed a bunch of followers and not a bunch of leaders. So I think if it's lonely at the top, then I probably need to do a better job of identifying leadership potential in others and really cultivating the leadership within others. So I don't just stay lonely at the top. I go down the mountain, I grab somebody by the hand and say, come up here with me. This view is awesome, which is much more difficult. It's much more time consuming, and it's not easy at all. It takes a lot more intentionality. But for me, that's where I found myself, was that I had developed followers and I hadn't developed leaders. And just real quick, what happens when you do that and you move on, like I did, out of our business tanked. And it's because I hadn't developed any leaders. So I was lonely at the top and I hadn't developed leaders. It's come back now. So if I could go back, I would look at the leadership potential in other people and intentionally invest in them and bring them to the top with me. So I don't think leadership should be lonely. I think it's very easy to get there, but I think we should be looking for people we can invest in and bring to the top with us. That's just my thought, Lois.
So, Cory, if you were to do things over again, what would you do differently this time around? What would you change?
Yeah. And I think it's exactly that. So I don't regret any of the decisions that we've made or anything that we have done by any means, because that's where my greatest learning has come from. But if at all possible, or if come up the scenario come up again, how about that? I would develop leaders. I truly would, because what I found was by developing followers, I was lonely at the top, that it all depended upon me. And two, I capped other people. I capped the potential in other people by not seeing the potential in them and extracting that potential, by not taking the intentional time to invest in them. So that would be maybe something I would do differently, or be intentional about going forward.
So when you were developing your business, your wife is intricately a part of your business. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. 100%. Yeah.
Okay. So in a sense, you had a support person there, that you're all having a partner that is in business with you, also a business partnership, has its own challenges. So speak a little bit to that as well, if you would.
Yeah, it does. And I love working with my wife. That's something, she still does the physical therapy stuff, and I do this and now, and we talk about, I'd love to be able to get back into doing something together, but it does, right? Because you've got the home life where you're trying to get kids and you're taking them here. And there's obviously some frustrations at times there, and happy moments there. And then there are times when you go into work but it's like, you have to put on that work hat, right? Like you have to separate that out. So if we weren't on the same page going into our business, and as we walked in the doors, it would not be fair for me to bring that same energy and that same emotion in to me treating one of our team members, or even a patient, with that attitude or with that energy and emotion. So very intentional about being aware of my thoughts and emotions and flipping the switch, because the great thing is that's one thing you have control over, your attitude. I have control over my attitude. I have control over my emotions, and I have to be very intentional about that. I share one super quick story with you. Our oldest son, he came to me mad one day. He was mad. And I don't know if you've ever been so mad your bottom lip quivers, but he was mad. He was crying. He was so mad. And I got to asking him, I said, Colton, what's wrong, man? And he said, oh, Brady just made me so mad. And that's his younger brother. And got to talking to him. Brady had said something to him. And I told him, I said, Colton, if somebody else can make you mad, if somebody else can make you sad, or somebody else can make you glad, then you've been had. If somebody else can make you sad, mad, or glad, you've been had, because what you've done is you've given somebody else power and control over the one thing you have control over, and that's your emotions, that's your attitude. So kind of going back to your question, it's really being aware of my thoughts and my emotions, and knowing that I have control over that, right? Like nobody else does. I can control my response.
You can control your response, and it takes an incredible amount of awareness, don't you think, to be able to get there?
Oh, incredible is the word. That's right. Incredible. It's not easy by any means.
Okay. So tell me, was that something that came to you more because of your training through John Maxwell, or is that something that is more innately a part of you?
I think initially it was innately, and what's the thing? When you're unaware of some of your strengths that you have, right? So it was something that I was unaware that I was doing, but now that I've learned and I've actually worked with other leaders and helped them do it, it is now something I'm a conscious competent, right? I'm a conscious competent now. I was a unconscious competent prior to, so it was a little bit. But definitely grown in that area, which is how allowed me to be more intentional about it and do a better job of that. Definitely not easy now. I'm not perfect, right? But yeah.
Well, none of us are. We'd like to think we are, right? But none of us are, which is, I think, coaches who aren't perfect are probably the ones who maybe do the best, because they've had their own lessons, right?
Oh, definitely. And I've got a bunch of them. So yeah. Some of them are tough.
Some of them are tough. Always, life it has its tough moments of teaching. So,
Yes.
Cory, our time is rapidly disappearing on us. What are some thoughts that you think are really, really important? We've talked a little bit about your mastermind groups and what you do, but what is really critical that we've left out or that you would like leaders to think about as they go about their day-to-day or quarterly, yearly planning work, whatever?
Yeah, I absolutely love what you're doing with the podcast of legacy. And I think that is the key in being intentional about it, not at some point in the future, but today, and being a river and not a reservoir. You want to be a river with all your experiences. You want to be a river with all the training and knowledge that you have, and always be mentoring somebody. And one thing, have that mentor, that person you're mentoring, require them to have somebody that they are mentoring as well, because you don't want ever get to a point where you are a reservoir. You want to be a river. You've got life experiences, you've got wisdom and knowledge, and there's somebody out there that's hungry for it. And one last thought on that. We've talked about developing followers and developing leaders. One of the key learnings that I've shifted to as well is that as I work with businesses and then grow my own, is that I want to invest my time with the top 20%, not spend my time with the bottom 20%. Most leaders, what we do is we spend our time with that loudest, most difficult, toughest people, but we want to invest our time with the top 20%, because we know if we influence the best, they're going to influence the rest. And when I say invest and spend, there's a difference there. When I invest my time with someone, there's an intentionality with my time with them. As I'm sitting down with somebody on my team, I'm asking the questions, I'm developing the relationship, I'm doing all those things, but there's an intentionality, because I want to hear in their voice where they want to go. I want to hear where their passions are, because that's going to give me a clue into their strengths. I'm also asking them questions because I want to see how far they're willing to go with me as well. So there's an intentionality behind my time. So biggest thing I'd love to leave with you is that you've got gifts and talents that this world needs, and be a river, not a reservoir with that. Yeah.
Be a river and not a reservoir. I love that. We just came back from spending some time in the Utah desert and climbing all the different rocks there to see the beautiful sights. And there, when you saw a river, it was magnificent, and it flowed through the country. So be a river, not a reservoir.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Cory. And we will put information about those 2 downloads that Cory has available so that you can have access to them. They will be in the show notes for you. Thank you so much for being with us today on Building My Legacy podcast. And Cory, thank you for being with us and sharing your story with us as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. And also remember to visit us on our website at buildtomorrow.com and all of our social media sites as well. Thanks much, everybody.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.